I experienced so many emotions. Some of them were really unexpected.
Camila Willingham is a sexual assault survivor.
It started with numbness, and I was angry for a long time, and then I was sad.
Colleges and universities are supposed to be safe places for learning, but Camila says the impact of sexual violence can make a survivor feel as though nowhere is safe.
Couldn't go anywhere without looking over my shoulder, couldn't study without fearing that I would have a panic attack or actually having one.
A federal law called Title IX is in place to protect Camila and other survivors of sexual violence. It's a civil rights law prohibiting sex discrimination, sexual harassment, and sexual violence at schools from grade schools to colleges.
From the assault itself to the way that the process plays out, yeah, that's an experience that sticks with you for a lifetime.
Camila is speaking out to encourage a better response to survivors. She insists compassion is a key to Title IX.
I felt really dehumanized a lot of times throughout the process.
Institutions that take an investment in this, it becomes part of what they hold sacred. Their institutional values around preventing discrimination and preventing violence against their own students, that these programs become a part of who they are.
It's important to have a law that protects those victims, protects the campus, and creates an atmosphere where students can learn freely, learn in a place that they don't fear being discriminated against, a place they don't feel as hostile, a place that's welcoming.
Under Title IX, schools must publish a notice of non-discrimination, designate an employee to coordinate Title IX compliance, and adopt and publish grievance procedures that provide for a prompt and equitable resolution. There's a critical group on campus who ensure institutions are able to meet all the rights and options afforded under Title IX. They're known as responsible employees.
Responsible employees serve as a gateway, so often students or other members of the university or college community may disclose or tell a responsible employee that they were harassed or sexually assaulted, and so that person has an obligation to get that information to the Title IX coordinator.
What is a responsible employee's role under Title IX?
A good responsible employee makes sure that not only you know what variables as a responsible employee I have to reveal to the institution in my role, but also what are the resources on campus or at your school that are available to individuals who may have faced sexual violence or sexual misconduct.
If people don't understand their role, if they're not trained, if they're not sure what to do, chances are if a student goes through the process or employee goes through the process and has a bad experience, others are going to see that and they may not come forward.
Under Title IX, a responsible employee is any employee who has the authority to take action against sexual violence, or who has been given the duty of reporting incidents of sexual violence or misconduct to the Title IX coordinator, or who a student could reasonably believe has that authority.
What I often see with so many of the students that we work with is that they don't understand that they have different places they can go. They don't understand what their rights are. They don't understand what's best for them. I think what a responsible employee has an excellent opportunity to do is to encourage them to understand what their rights are.
If you have any doubts about whether you're a responsible employee, it's critical to ask your Title IX coordinator. If someone reports a violation to you, the best advice? Be compassionate.
The way a responsible employee should act is just a basic human sort of wherewithal about how you are empathic. If we take a bureaucratic approach to it, then it becomes very distant. It becomes very cold. You should not be taking sides. You should not be guaranteeing outcomes in some way. You shouldn't be advocating. And at the same time, you should be empathic.
Some of the options that victims really are looking for are, should I have counseling? Should I have medical attention? Do I want to meet with law enforcement? Or do I need basically class or housing measures that would better help me feel more safe?
Remember, your job as a responsible employee is to take the information and report it to the Title IX coordinator.
They're not going to be required to decide whether or not it's a crime, whether it's a Title IX incident. They should report it to a responsible person and let the professionals then determine what exactly occurred and what needs to be done.
Responsible employees should tell the person disclosing that they will not repeat those details to just anyone like a roommate or a professor, but they will need to share specific information with the Title IX coordinator. This information includes the name of the student reporting sex discrimination, the name of the alleged perpetrator if it's known, the names of other students involved, as well as all other relevant details, including the time, date, and location.
Hey, what's up? Nothing. I just wondered if I could talk to you about something. Yeah, of course.
It's also important to advise students about their right to request confidentiality. Be upfront with the person reporting about what you have to do with the information.
So if someone comes to a responsible employee and asks them to keep it to themselves, really the answer is no.
So what they do is they can say, I'm just going to interrupt you for just a minute. Compassionate interrupting is a way to alert them that this is what my role is and my obligation is to report to the Title IX coordinator, as well as also saying, before you take this next step with me, let's see if there are other options that might be better for you.
There's a lot of concerns around privacy, about what's happened to them, what might happen going forward. So I have found that a lot of individuals who report to me really want to feel out first, sort of, what is it going to mean for me to disclose this information? And that's actually a great opportunity before I have any details for me to really say, let's hit the pause button and so that you can understand all of your rights, options, all of the resources available.
A responsible employee needs to explain the process to the person reporting and make sure they fully understand the terms you use.
You shouldn't make assumptions that the person that you're talking to understands the Title IX system or the terms that you're using. So we should explain if we're using a term like confidential. What does it mean to be confidential? When we're using the term private, what does that mean? And what does it mean in the context of our university or college?
It's incredibly important for a complainant to know what's confidential or what's private or what's not, because again, if you're in a position where you feel like your trust has been breached, you get this sense of betrayal.
Under no circumstances should you start your own mini investigation, that you start asking questions about what happened. You start asking questions that in some way lead the reporting party to believe that you're passing judgment.
Sexual violence is really, really rampant in the gender nonconforming and trans community.
John Kelly, also a survivor of campus sexual assault, knows firsthand the importance of a compassionate response.
First of all, if someone comes to you and tells you that they've experienced sexual violence, work from a place of honesty and belief and support. Don't be making value judgments about people's lives, about people's experiences. I mean, it was devastating. I had just experienced this really huge trauma, and to not feel like there was anyone in a position of power who was on my side was really hard to deal with.
Remember, it's not a responsible employee's role to determine what happened. Instead, they should listen to what is shared and pass along the information to the Title IX coordinator, who ensures there's an equitable process in place on campus.
Responsible employees are important because they're part of a greater wheel. They are on the ground. They're meeting with students. They understand a lot of kind of what's going on in that community.
A well-trained employee is a survivor's best friend. And a poorly trained employee or an untrained employee is our worst nightmare.
It's also important students know who a responsible employee is before a crisis occurs.
There should be a 2-click rule. What does that mean? That means within 2 clicks in going to your college, school district's website, the student should be able to determine who's your Title IX coordinator and also what is your grievance procedures, as well as your hotline.
Anyone who's a responsible employee should make sure to notify people or publicize that they're serving in that role, and some institutions have done that with stickers on office doors, with notices in a syllabus. Taking 5 minutes in the opening of a class when most of your students are attentive and explaining to them what that is.
So what happens with the information after it's shared with the Title IX coordinator?
So at that point, the school would initiate an investigation. In the ideal scenario, we would partner with the victim to talk about that investigation, to keep that person informed.
Title IX calls for a fact-finding investigation to determine if a violation occurred and what actions the school will take to prevent it in the future. In all cases, a Title IX investigation must give both parties the opportunity to present witnesses and evidence. The investigation must also be adequate, reliable, and impartial. The process must be prompt and equitable for all parties involved. That's one of the reasons a responsible employee must act as soon as they learn of sexual violence. Title IX only allows a certain amount of time for the institution to respond.
We are on notice the moment that the reporting party sort of tells the responsible employee of their situation. So it's critical, it's time critical for many reasons. A, for the investigation sort of to go forward, but more importantly so that support services can be given to the reporting party.
As a responsible employee, the key questions to ask yourself are, do I know if I'm a responsible employee? Who is the Title IX coordinator at my institution? This is the person that can help you learn whether or not you are a responsible employee and answer any questions you have about your role. And do I know what information needs to be shared? And do I know how to share it promptly? Some campuses use reporting forms to share this information. Your school's Title IX coordinator can help you understand the best way to share a report. Remember, the Title IX coordinator receives all relevant information and details. If you're a responsible employee, your primary goal is to respond with care. Understand where the information needs to go so the person can get the support and resources they need. And communicate that responsibility to the person so they have a sense of what happens next.
If you really are an educator, you care about this, and you care enough to make sure that you do your job right.
I think for campuses that embrace wanting victims to come forward, I think it's not only embracing, let's help this person who is in crisis, I think it's also embracing that they want to have a safer community.
Whenever we talk about sexual violence or harassment on a college or university campus, it all comes down to climate. And so it's not one person's job, it has to be a team effort.
If students don't feel safe on campus, of course you can't learn. A really good responsible employee can make a tremendous difference, both on the victim's life throughout the process and just as they heal, which can be a lifelong process.
People watching this video will have the ability to change lives for the better or for the worse. You can make things better. You can make things better for individual people, and that changes the world. I don't see how there's anything more powerful than that.